Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 228 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host, not ho-ho. I guess I just had dessert, so maybe that's why that's on the brain. Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way as my co-host. Adnan, how are we doing tonight?
I see you're in the Christmas spirit tonight, Kevin.
Apparently.
No, I'm doing very well. We are trudging along in the off season right now. It's the off season and it's also draft season. So, let's get into it and let's continue delivering that sweet content to the people indefinitely.
Yes, the sweet draft content. It's going to start coming hot and heavy. You guys have seen the first two of my Senior Bowl previews that have come out on the site. All of the defensive ones are done. They're scheduled up through Saturday. I'm working on the offensive ones as we speak. Not, while we record, but, after we record, I may go continue to work on that. But it's coming sooner than you could believe. The actual practices will be less than a week away, starting on Tuesday, and the Shrine Bowl starts even sooner than that. And we know that the Falcons take these events very seriously, particularly the Senior Bowl, where they've drafted 10 players from the Senior Bowl in the last two drafts. So they put a lot of value in these all-star games. They will have coaching representation at each of them this year. The entire Falcons coaching staff will be at the Shrine Bowl, whereas at the Senior Bowl, Charles London will be the offensive coordinator for one of the teams, and of course the scouting staff will be there as well. So a lot of Falcons representation at these events. We're also going to be talking about the defensive coordinator search because we did get an interesting tidbit today about former player, but a coach that is maybe going to enter the picture late, depending on what the Carolina Panthers decide to do. And that's where we'll start off. I'll also give you guys, for those that didn't listen to yesterday's show, an update on the future of the podcast, what's going on there, give you some details on that. But let's get to some Steve Wilks talk here, Adnan. Sort of a name that I think we bounced around in the Falcoholic Discord a little bit as maybe an option if the Falcons were to wait it out and see if the Panthers go in a different direction at head coach. It's starting to seem more and more likely that the Panthers are either going to go after a Frank Reich. That seems to be the prevailing theory there, and sort of spurn Wilks, who, by all accounts, the fans and the players want Wilks to be the permanent head coach. So things have certainly changed there with the Panthers, and if Steve Wilks were to not be in Carolina, well, that would make him one of the most desirable defensive coordinators on the market. And according to a report from a Panthers radio reporter, I apologize, I don't remember her name right off the top of my head. I will look it up in just a second. But the Falcons are, quote, closely monitoring the situation with Steve Wilks, presumably to potentially swoop in and make him their defensive coordinator if he were to shake loose. How do you feel about the possibility of Steve Wilks getting here to Atlanta to get a little bit of revenge, perhaps, on his old team?
I'm a big supporter of the idea. So, we talked about the big three in the defensive coordinator search last week as we're coining it right now, and Avero from Denver, Vic Fangio, who is working as a consultant at the moment, and Remind me one more time. Steelers linebackers coach.
Oh, Brian Flores. Yeah.
Flores. Name slipped my mind. Brian Flores. I would have been thrilled with any of those three. I still will be absolutely thrilled with any of those three names. Wilks could turn this into a Big Four type thing because he has the credentials. He for sure deserves to remain the head coach of the Carolina Panthers after the job that he did following Rule's dismissal this past season. He not only inherited what was essentially a dumpster fire of a team, but he inherited a dumpster fire of a team that had also just lost its best player in Christian McCaffrey. They just lost their offensive coordinator in Joe Brady, and he did as good of a job as anyone could have expected. Like, he almost led that team to the most unlikely of division titles. They came very close to beating the Buccaneers in the second to last week to really give themselves a chance for that division. They would have essentially won it with a win against New Orleans in the season finale. But Wilks did a phenomenal job. I can see why Carolina, sort of doesn't want to stick with him. I'm pretty sure ownership, David Tepper, wants an exciting name. They want a brand new voice, which, I mean, I understand. But Wilks was fantastic with Carolina, and I think that he will be a fantastic defensive coordinator if Atlanta, can persuade him to join the team in that role. I'm pretty sure that Arthur Blank would not have any issues throwing a bit of a bag at him. I think that the Falcons will spare no expense for this defensive coordinator position, as evidenced by the names, by the candidates they're interviewing. I'm pretty sure Wilks will have some head coaching interviews as well. But I think at the end of the day, he'll likely need to work his way there as a defensive coordinator for at least another season. He's a prime name. The Falcons have already actually even interviewed one of his assistants in Al Holcomb, who was the DB's coach for Carolina this past season for that vacant defensive coordinator role. Holcomb could come over to Atlanta in the same role he was with in Carolina as well, coaching the secondary with Wilks. I'd be all for it. I love the idea of bringing him in as one of those big four candidates, and we mentioned it with Ejiro last week we mentioned it with Ejiro last week that even if Wilks ends up being a head coaching candidate, even if he's not here long term, the way that we're expecting Vic Fangio to be in a possible defensive coordinator role long term, the way that someone like a Dick LeBeau was in Pittsburgh, then the Falcons will still benefit from getting those 2 third-round picks for helping to promote a minority candidate to that head coaching role in the future. So I look at it as a win-win, and I'm here for it. Bring him in, as I think this would be one of the 4 home run hires that the team could make.
Yeah, I agree. I would vault Steve Wilks up near the top of my defensive coordinator rankings if he were to come available. And the reason it's interesting is because he's technically not under contract at the Panthers after this year. So he's not, the Panthers can't necessarily prevent him from leaving if he wanted to leave to take a defensive coordinator job elsewhere. It may be that if they do go with the Frank Reich, that Reich is happy to keep Wilks as defensive coordinator, but would Wilks want to stay in Carolina with, I think believing that he's sort of proven himself to be a head coach.
Demotion.
Right, after he did a great job. And I do wonder if the relationship there is repairable if he's spurned by the Panthers in this coaching hire. Would he consider just going back to be the defensive coordinator again? I don't know. We don't know what that's like. We don't have the details, but I would think it's at least partially a chance that Wilks might not want to go back to Carolina if he's not the head coach. So there's a decent shot of him sort of changing gears and coming to Atlanta. I do think he'll have other suitors, but as you add more candidates to this pool, like Brian Flores is one of the hottest names, of course. We've talked a lot about him. Vic Fangio as well. Now it seems like maybe Sean Payton maybe will not take a coaching job this cycle, which leaves Vic Fangio out there. Those guys are going to be hotly chased by every single team with a defensive coordinator need, and that could include the 49ers if DeMeco Ryans gets a head coaching job. It could include the Eagles if Jonathan Gannon gets a head coaching job. It could include other guys as well, depending on what happens. So we'll see where these guys end up. But I do think that Wilks would get to the top of the list, and I think you look at the other side of the coin there, which is that maybe, it might be nice for Wilks if the relationship is strained in Carolina. He might be actually looking to get a little revenge there, show his old team that he messed up. And this could be a really good spot for Wilks to come in for a year or two, show that he can really turn around a defense. Players reportedly love him, so I would be happy to have that. He get a chance here in Atlanta to revamp the defense and then be right back on the market as a head coaching candidate in a year or two. And I think that would work out well for the Falcons, who maybe could take that time to groom their own guy like a Frank Bush to potentially be their future there, or just to get the defense in a position where these top candidates would be more likely to take the job. Because right now, we all know it, the Falcons defense is talent poor, and it's not all that enticing for a top candidate to come into, right? I mean, it needs a lot of work. There's a certain amount of risk involved with that, right? Like if you whiff on your free agents and you whiff on your draft picks, they're now inheriting a talent poor defense, and that might hurt their image. So,
however, the counterpoint that I would make to that is that the Falcons have a lot of cap space. The Falcons do have all of their draft picks. You could entice a defensive coordinator in here by saying, hey, we have this open space. You can build this defense in your image a lot quicker than you could, with another franchise where, you have more cap constraints, for example. So, maybe it would be very tempting for one of these big name defensive coordinators to come here and, to be able to bring in their own free agent players, to be able to, maybe if the team promises to draft, a defensive player in the first round, they'll be able to have a big hand in selecting who that player is, for example. So, also the idea that this defense will be completely yours because Arthur Smith isn't going to be involved in any of the defensive decisions. So, that, and like I said, I'm pretty sure that Arthur Blank will spare no expense regarding financials for whoever is brought in. So, this could be a very enticing job, despite the fact that this defense is a bit starved for talent. Like, the resources are there.
Yeah. I think it's sort of like the best of the rest job. Like, obviously Philadelphia, San Francisco, those are going to be the prime spots where any coordinator would be jumping up and down to get into those spots, because I mean, it's just a ticket to a head coaching job. With how good those units are. So, Robert Saleh, D'Amico Ryans, it's just a pipeline for these guys. So that the Falcons can't compete with those openings, but, Minnesota, a lot of pressure there, not a lot of money to work with. Miami is one, but, that's another, there's other stuff going on there. Carolina potentially has the better talent, but much, much worse off in terms of your ability to go out and add pieces. So there's pros and cons to all the jobs. I think the Falcons job is one of the mid-range ones. I don't think it's likely to get the top guys, but I think a discerning coordinator looking to make a jump to head coach, looking to really have independence, like you said, Adnan, and have an opportunity to really show that they can build something, not just inherit something. This is a good opportunity for that. And I think if you turn around a defense like the Falcons, it's a big accolade, a big thing to add to your resume, and teams are going to really like that on a head coaching resume. So I think it makes a lot of sense for Steve Wilks to consider this job. Could bring Al Holcomb with him as I think the Falcons like their linebackers coach in Frank Bush, but Holcomb could come in as like a co-DC or something like that, and run game coordinator or whatever, because those two seem like they like to work together. And you don't necessarily have to push Frank Bush off, his spot, or maybe you promote Frank Bush and make Al Holcomb the linebackers coach. Who knows? But I do think it's a situation worth monitoring, and Wilks is one of the names I would have near the top of my list, right in that tier with Fangio and Flores in terms of the best possible hires for this team. So, and you robbed the Panthers of him, which is nice too. So,
yeah. Also, the Falcons play in a very shitty division. Like, let's be honest, the Buccaneers offense isn't going to look very inspired next year, I'm pretty sure. The Saints offense looks rather disjointed since Sean Payton left, and that's a very funny situation happening with Sean Payton right now, where I'm pretty sure the Saints were very much counting on them getting multiple picks, including a first rounder for Payton. I'm pretty sure that they were expecting that when they made that trade for Olave last offseason. And, now it looks like he may go back to TV because it seems like the openings aren't really there. The jobs that he covets aren't really there. And he's not even getting any second interviews anywhere. So, that's sort of destroying the Saints' leverage, and it's kind of killing some of their plans. And, it's not surprising at all that they had such a short-sighted plan with that. Um, but that's very fun. And next offseason, if he is a candidate, then I'm pretty sure that they won't have the leverage to look for the picks that they are looking for. I think the rumor was that they wanted 2 firsts, like
Yep.
2 seconds, and like $8 million or something like that, which is that's what you pay to get Lamar Jackson, or
Yeah.
damn near. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. And then you have the Panthers, what would be Wilks' former team, who will also be in a transitional period with a brand new head coach who, don't exactly have, that's not a team screaming with talent. So this is a scenario where the Falcons could turn it around. There's not any supreme juggernauts of offenses that they'll probably have to face next offseason. And if you work some magic with this defense and even get them up to the teens and they're successful, then Wilks could find himself as a head coaching candidate, or any defensive coordinator that they bring in could get some head coaching interviews next offseason.
Yeah. So we'll see how that develops, but I do like the idea of Wilks coming here for sure. And we did have a couple of donations come in off the air. We did just have one come in from Universe with the $5. Thank you so much, Universe. I didn't see a question, so if you do have a question, just notate it in the chat, and I'll make sure to get to it, Universe, in case it just didn't come through right on my end. But thank you very much for the donation. On the topic of the coaching search, Gary Stafford with the $20. Thank you so much, Gary, man. Really appreciate that. He says, how much of a setback is the loss of Dean Pease? Do you guys think we need to get a similar scheme in here to fit the players that he recruited? It's a good question. I do think the loss of Dean Pease is significant. It really depends on who they bring in to replace him. I mean, I think Dean Pease's experience is so valuable. I think he's just such an important guy in building this team. His experience, his leadership was invaluable, and we're going to miss that. But I think if the Falcons go out and get a really good defensive coordinator in here, then the loss won't be as noticeable. It's not going to be the same as Pease, but I think you could mitigate it quite a bit and potentially even improve on Pease if you get one of these up-and-coming guys. But the bigger question is like the second part of that, which is, do we need to run a similar scheme to fit the players that are here now? And I think that is much more worthy of discussion. Adnan, what do you think about that? I mean, it seems like they were starting to move more towards a 3-4 defense. But again, I think they emphasize that they have hybrid personnel, so maybe it's not as big a deal as some think. Where do you sort of land on that?
No, I don't think that this defense is a finished product by any means. Like, if this defense was, in a similar mold as, let's say, the 49ers defense, where you have a bunch of these guys who are your long-term cornerstones and who, are signed in long-term and whatnot, then yeah, that would be one thing. But this defense, we just mentioned it, there's a lot of resources out there for whoever the next defensive coordinator is to bring in some of his own guys to fit his own scheme. And also, there's not really that many pieces on this defense whom you would consider really like, long-term franchise cornerstones. Like, Grady Jarrett is there, of course. AJ Terrell. Jury's still out on both of the safeties. You hope Arnold Ebiketie and some of these guys that you took in the draft last year. But, there's not really these players here where it's like, all right, you have to fit the scheme to them. It's more so like, all right, like I would rather bring in, a good, the best possible defensive coordinator and let him sort of mold the team in his own image, especially since the team has those resources and what exactly are you tearing apart here? A defensive finish in the bottom five each of the past 2 seasons. I don't think that's that much of it. And, Grady Jarrett can play in multiple schemes. AJ Terrell can play in multiple schemes. The guys who are here long term can play in multiple schemes.
Yeah, exactly. I think they've sort of set this up to be a hybrid defense, and I think their edge rushers are definitely more of the 3-4 mold, but you move a guy, slightly differently, and it's a 4-3 under. So it's really like I think the distinction between 3-4 and 4-3 has never mattered like less in the NFL than it does these days. It's really just they're about to spend, right? They're about to take the plunge, and at that point you're probably going to have to commit more to your philosophy up front, the types of guys you're really going to prioritize. But in terms of what they already have, I think it's pretty easy to make it work either way, because I think with AJ Terrell, you have a scheme versatile cornerback one who can do a little bit of everything. I really think they should play Terrell more in man coverage because I think he's an excellent man coverage corner, but they've played him a lot in zone. He's gotten a lot better at it over the last 2 years. So if you want to stick with a zone heavy coverage scheme, that's fine too. They have a lot of flexibility at their other cornerback spots, right? They could decide to keep Casey Hayward if they think he's going to be back healthy. They could go for a cornerback high in the draft or in free agency. And based on the guy they get for the number 2 corner, that's going to tell us a lot about the sort of scheme that they want to run on the back end. You mentioned safety too. We've talked up Jesse Bates a lot on this show. And Jesse Bates is another guy that's pretty much scheme versatile. You can play him as the deep, single high guy. You can play him up near the line of scrimmage. It doesn't really matter. He's that good. He can do it all. So I do think, and Joe Schmo brings up a good point as well, that if they change schemes, they may need to change a lot of the verbiage. They may need to do a completely new install this offseason. And that takes time. It takes, it's an adjustment period for the defensive players. So, we'll see how similar it ends up being in the long run, but I don't think they should limit themselves in the coaching search to get a specific type of guy necessarily, at this point in the process. Just get the best guy you can for the most part. All right. Before we transition into our Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl talk here, do you need a list of the guys that are going, Adnan? I don't know if you had that already, but I could send you one. Okay. Yeah. I'll just message it to you real quick. Shout out to Alex Katzen, by the way, for doing a great spreadsheet tracking all these invites and the guys that have showed up that are going.
Yeah, I pulled it up on no, never mind. All right, I got it.
Yeah, this one might be easier to sort. He does a great job with sorting it. The ones that are in bold are the ones that are officially coming to both games. So I'll let you take a look at that for a minute while I give everyone an update on the state of the podcast. For those that didn't tune in to the Q&A last night or that aren't on the Discord, the news with the podcast is if you followed SB Nation, Vox Media over the last 3 or 5 days, you've heard about all the layoffs, I'm sure. It's hit a lot of the SB Nation sites. I believe pretty much all of the soccer and hockey were eliminated, which sucks because there were a lot of great people working there. They've also eliminated almost all of the podcasts, including almost all of the NFL podcasts, including this podcast. Not the video show, but the podcast Vox will no longer be publishing or supporting. We're still working through what that means, other than that I'm not going to get paid for it, right? That we'll figure out. The podcast is not going anywhere. We're going to continue to do the show. We're going to continue making podcast episodes. The question is, are we going to be able to use the original podcast feed, or are we going to have to make a new one? We don't know that yet. I think it would be rude of them to take the podcast feed away if they're not going to use it. It's just going to be dead. So I'm hoping we'll be able to continue publishing all the episodes in the feed that you guys already have on Spotify and Apple and all that stuff. If not, we'll make a new feed and it won't be a big deal. We'll give you guys plenty of warning for that, as the last day they're going to officially support the podcast is March 1st. So we will keep you guys updated, but I did want you guys to know that there may be a change to the podcast feed. We may need to make a new one. But one way or another, the show will continue. The podcast will continue with us here at the Falcoholic. If we have to secure our own advertising, we will. If we have to secure our own funding, we will. We'll figure it out. because we love doing the show for you guys. We think it fills a very important niche, and we have a lot of fun doing it, and it's I think it's good content. I think you guys really enjoy it, so we're not going to stop doing it. We'll figure it out. But we do really appreciate everyone on Patreon. The Patreon's going to help a lot with the transition. So if you're interested in supporting us, you can go there, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. There's we'll figure it out. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's frustrating, of course, for us because the podcast has continued to grow and get better, I think. Over the past few years, and I applaud the work that DW, did setting it up initially and getting it going, DW and Gina in the early years. And we're going to keep it going, whether it's here on the same feed or on a new one. But the video show will be unaffected, so you'll still get all these video episodes in the same place. But we just wanted to keep you guys posted, and if anything else changes, you'll be the first to know. So just thank you all for your support. We appreciate that, and don't need to panic. Yeah.
Brandon Brass made a great comment. The Falcoholic brought to you by George Costanza.
Yeah, there you go. Well, maybe we'll just, George Costanza becomes the official owner of the Falcoholic. He becomes the new owner. So, I mean, he's probably donated enough to buy the site outright at this point. So
he's the reason these lights are on in the background.
Yeah, brought to you by Built Bar. Built Bar, come talk to me. Look, if you're a business owner, if you're out there listening right now and you want to advertise, starting March 1st, I'm pretty sure we can advertise with whoever we want. So hit me up, falcoholiclive@gmail.com, guys. Let's do this thing.
And regarding the podcast and anything else, we'll the most important thing is no matter what happens, our team is still intact. Everyone at the Falcoholic, our team, is still committed to, providing you with the best possible, Falcons coverage. We all love doing what we're doing, and we'll do everything we possibly can to continue doing so. Whether it's on the live show or on the website, this is something that Dave built in 2006, I think it was, and it's not something that we're planning on, just sort of giving away, so easily. Like we're going to continue doing what we're doing.
Yeah, don't worry. The content will flow, is the takeaway message. We will figure it out one way or another, because we enjoy doing this, and the community we built here is too important to let slip away, based on outside interference. So we'll keep you guys posted on that. If anything else changes, if anything else develops, you'll be the first to know here on the show. But we just appreciate everyone's support over the many years, starting with Dave all the way back in 2006. So yeah, and Brandon says now Adnan, you can officially get that Twizzler endorsement. So
yeah, maybe we should have asked them for money instead of Twizzlers.
Considering how many Twizzlers they sent, I think we probably just would have preferred some cash, but that was enough Twizzlers for the apocalypse, I think. So, but thanks guys so much. We did just get a donation from Justin with the $3. Thank you so much, Justin. Appreciate that. He says, any worries that the Fangio coaching tree has been getting a little exposed this year? Guys like Joe Barry, Ed Donatel, Brandon Staley. Fangio runs a very similar soft zone. You're not necessarily wrong, Justin. Like, the defense is very much a bend, don't break style. I think the idea of it might frustrate more fans that don't understand Fangio's style. It's more of a coverage heavy, keep everything in front of you, and then capitalize on third and long defense, as opposed to let's build up the pass rush and get after the quarterback. It's not like that. It's very much a coverage heavy defense. I will say that Vic Fangio has had success everywhere he's run this defense. He's the best proprietor of it, in my opinion. I do think Brandon Staley had some good years with the Rams, but I think as a head coach, he hasn't quite kept it at the same level. And then Joe Barry, he hasn't really done a great job. He hasn't been a defensive coordinator since 2013. Ed Donatel did quite a poor job in Minnesota. So I think it's more about the guy running it than there being a problem with the scheme, because I think pretty much any scheme can work in the NFL unless it's like completely brain dead. But the personnel matters, and like how the defense is called and how you utilize what you do, I think is more important than just the three or guys struggling to do it. You have to be able to roll with the punches. So I think Fangio has shown the ability to do that pretty much everywhere he's been. But do you have any concern about the style that Fangio runs?
No, not really. I mean, like Vic Fangio has, he has too proven of a track record for me to be, questioning that right now. Like, schemes, obviously they matter, but Vic Fan, anywhere he goes, he just builds top 10 defenses. So I'm not super worried about that.
Yeah, no, me neither. I think it's pretty doable. All right, let's get into the draft takes. I know we from the Discord, we have people wanting us to talk about wide receivers. We'll definitely talk about wide receivers because the Senior Bowl always has a really good wide receiver class. So does the Shrine Bowl this year. The NFL has really worked to sort of elevate the Shrine Bowl as a place for some of the top underclassmen to consider going, because you guys may or may not know, the Senior Bowl actually is just for seniors or for underclassmen that have graduated early. So if you're an underclassman, you can't actually go to the Senior Bowl unless you've already graduated. They do have pretty strict requirements for that. So the Shrine game has sort of benefited from the transition to being in Vegas and the NFL sort of supporting it. So there's some better names than there used to be there. But let's just we'll go position by position. Like I said, I just finished my defense stuff, and we can just sort of talk about any of the guys that stand out at both games. You want to start on the offense or defensive side, Adnan? What's your preference?
Let's go with the defense, just because I'm pretty sure that's where the pick is going to be. Oh, yeah. Well, no, not pretty sure, but if I had to pick,
yeah,
I'd say the team will probably lean more toward the defense.
Yeah, I think at 8, it's either going to be an offensive tackle or a defensive player. That's sort of my thought. Or Bijan Robinson, right?
No, yeah.
But on the defensive side, at edge, particularly at the Senior Bowl, there's a lot of really good players. I think there's 2 projected first rounders and a guy like Isaiah Foskey, who I've already mocked to the team, Derek Hall from Auburn. And there's a good number of those sort of second-tier guys as well. Any of those names stand out to you, Adnan?
So one name that I really am intrigued in regarding the Senior Bowl is one of the smaller school guys, Isaiah Land. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to really, see any of what his game is about, but last year had 19 sacks and was the defensive player of the year in the FCS. Played for Florida A&M. So he's a bit lighter on the lighter edge, but he's someone who I can see. Given who the Falcons took last year in the draft, someone like a D'Angelo Malone, who was also on the lighter side, I can see them going with someone like a Land for that defensive line rotation, someone who's a bit more explosive. He's a pretty good technician. So that's definitely a name that I'm intrigued in. Another one is Keanu Benton from Wisconsin, just because this team really does need a nose tackle still. I think we've been searching for one for God knows how long. I don't remember the last great nose tackle the Falcons have had.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's someone who's, very big, very thick, someone who can really play that zero technique. Next to Grady Jarrett, a big space eater. So, those are the 2 guys I'll be, really keeping a close eye on when it comes to the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, and it was sad because 2 of the top guys, Tyree Wilson and Siaki Ika, pulled out due to injury. And this happens every year. The top guys sometimes will just opt out of doing the Senior Bowl because they're pretty confident in their projection as top picks, and they don't want to risk an injury. They don't feel like they need to prove anything else. And look, with Tyree Wilson, I get it. He's probably going to be a top 10 pick. So it's like you don't really need to go to the Senior Bowl. It's always nice, but I don't blame him. Siaki Ika, I think, was more questionable because it's for everyone who likes nose tackles, go watch Siaki Ika tape because that dude is massive and fun to watch. But I do think he has more question marks to his game than some of these other guys. I don't really think he's a slam dunk first rounder. He is still getting some buzz there, but um, I think he could have benefited from a strong week, but Keanu Benton's definitely one that I really like. You mentioned him. You also mentioned Isaiah Land, who is really quite a unique player. Like, I think he's like 210 pounds and playing edge, so very unique. I wonder if maybe he has to move to more of like an off ball or like a Michael Walker style role, or at least what we thought Michael Walker would be, where he's sort of a Sam linebacker that rushes the passer occasionally. But in terms of his athleticism, just absolutely bananas player in Isaiah Land. But yeah, Derek Hall, like I said, another projected first rounder, Isaiah Foskey, those are the two big name guys that are sort of expected to dominate. And if they do, they could definitely see their stock go up. And I know a lot of people on here are big fans of Andre Carter from Army. Andre Carter didn't follow up his tremendous season in 2021 with a particularly productive one this year. So I think it's an important week for him to sort of get his name back in the mix for like this day 2. Carter's sort of fallen into more of that early day 3 range. So I do wonder how he does, because I think he's a really unique, explosive player, and it's going to have an opportunity to really stand out in the one-on-ones, which is sort of the meat of the Senior Bowl week, is getting to see these guys go at each other in one-on-one drills. So we can move to linebacker, where I think the Falcons do have a pretty significant need, right? I mean, it depends on who they decide to bring back. It depends on how much the Falcons are willing to believe in Troy Anderson being ready, and I think to a certain extent they will. But any linebackers you like going to the Senior Bowl, Adnan?
Ivan Pace from Cincinnati. I think he was on Desmond Ritter's team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yep.
Right. He was
actually, I don't think he was, because I think he just transferred in. Let me double check that. Because I think he might have been from Miami of Ohio, because I just did his write up today.
We're all about the facts here at the Falcoholic.
Yes. So Ivan Pace Jr. was at Miami of Ohio through 2021. He transferred to Cincinnati this year. So did not overlap with Ritter, unfortunately.
Okay. But yeah, that we could have a nice Cincinnati quota where we take a Bearcat every single year. He was unanimous All-American, 21.5 tackles for loss.
Yeah.
10 sacks this season. He's someone who can get, he can get into the backfield. Very, very good bull rush technique, a good pass rusher. So, that's something that the Falcons have been lacking for years. And, as evidenced by the fact that they have by far the fewest sacks in the NFL over the past 2 years. So that's the biggest name that I'm looking out for. I don't think, maybe we'll see if he's there, on day 2 for the team, but that's the biggest name. That's the biggest name that I'll be looking at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I do really like Ivan Pace. I think that's a good one for sure. And I think for me, the big names to watch definitely include Ivan Pace. I think I would also go for a guy like Brandon Brass brought it up, DeMarvion Overshone, a very interesting guy, right? Like 6'4", 224, kind of reminds me of Kyle Hamilton. He's a former safety.
That's someone that we really wanted last year too.
Yeah. So he's obviously someone who's going to have a lot of eyes on him as a guy that, like, if he really shows out, could see he's sort of like a early day 3 sort of guy based on his athletic traits right now. But if he like has a great week, that's a guy that could definitely see his stock rise. It's not hard to see that. Henry 2020 from Alabama. He's definitely the top linebacker there now. At this point. So he's another guy, right? Really athletic linebacker, great in coverage. Could be someone that does make a sort of solidify himself as a top player. The secondary is probably an underrated one, right? For the Falcons, I think a lot of folks are pretty obsessed with the idea that the Falcons. George has thrown me off here with this Stetson Bennett at 8 donation. Thanks, George, for that one. Stetson Bennett at 8 because you can't teach winning. Thanks, George. Appreciate that one. I'm looking up your other donation right now, by the way. But the secondary, I think it is like a sneaky need, right? I think a cornerback too, if they don't bring back Casey Hayward, maybe even if they do bring him back, it's still a big need. And then at safety, Richie Grant, I think, is someone they're going to want to build around and hope that he continues to develop. But like Jalen Hawkins, sort of just an average starter. Maybe they go after a big free agent, but there are certainly some safeties to consider too. Are there any guys you like in the secondary, Adnan?
What about Julius Brents from Kansas State? It's someone who literally has all the physical tools you could ask for at the position because, I think, like you said, I think that's a sneaky need, the second cornerback position. I think they will keep Casey Hayward, but I don't really like the depth the team has at cornerback, honestly. Like, Hayward and Terrell are fine, but I think this team could definitely stand to add another possible impact cornerback for sure, especially if they are going with they do get someone like a Vic Fangio who likes to play with more than two corners at a time. I think his base defense, his base alignment is having 3 cornerbacks out there. So that's someone who I'll keep an eye out on as well. 6'4", very aggressive, very physical. Fast and physical. If we're going with that Daniel back in the day, but that's definitely someone to watch out for as well.
Yeah, no, I think that one makes a lot of sense. He definitely did remind me of like, oh, this is like a guy Dan Quinn would just love. Like you just feel it. Like great cover 3 corner, huge. Another guy in a similar mold is like a JL Skinner, the safety from Boise State, another 6'4" safety. He's going to have a lot of eyes on him as a result. We did see Jordan Battle drop out of the Senior Bowl. He was one of the top guys, but in his place came Christopher Smith from Georgia, so we got a dog to watch. Christopher Smith.
Hey, we need to fill the quota, Kevin. We need at least 2 dogs.
Yeah, at least 2 dogs. Is that like I need at least 3 starters? I need at least 2 dogs.
We got 4 starters.
4 starters.
In that job, technically.
We did.
So
maybe he should say that more. Yeah.
Yeah, shit. Make some more. Yeah, Arthur. Like, give some more ultimatums out there. Like, yeah, what are we doing out here? Yeah. We need 3 starters. We got 4 starters that draft.
We did, so maybe he should put that out there more often. But yeah, I mean, Christopher Smith from Georgia. All jokes aside, probably the top safety there now. I think he's like a fringe first rounder. Just a really good player. Jamie Robinson from Florida State, amazing name. Love that. And there are some good corners. Like I think we were kind of spoiled by last year's DB class at the Senior Bowl. And Devon Witherspoon at corner pulled out as well, and that was a guy that I would have loved to see because I think he would have just run circles around everyone. But there are still some good players like Caillou Blue Kelly from Stanford. If the Falcons go to more of a man-heavy scheme, I think he could be in play on day 2. Rajon Wright, amazing name. He's also a good player. Not just if I say they have an amazing name, it's usually because I also think they're a good player. But there's some talent there for sure. And I'm excited to see these DBs because this is a good opportunity for us to segue into the offensive side. There's a lot of very good wide receivers out there. And these DBs are going to have their hands full with quite a few dynamic wide receivers. I don't know how big of a fan you are of the Falcons taking a wide receiver, depending on the time of the draft, but what do you think about this group going to the Senior Bowl?
I mean, I wouldn't be against taking a wide receiver. I'm on record saying that I think what they have at wide receiver is fine, especially if they get an extra, another free agent like an Allen Lazard. I keep harping on his name over and over again. I think that would be the perfect addition for this team as that, number 3 option. But, let's say that, for example, they decide not to re-sign Damiere Byrd, which personally I would bring back Damiere Byrd. I liked what he brought. A very underrated name, Andre Iosivas.
I think it's Iosivas.
My apologies.
I don't
Like
know.
I'm
I honestly have no idea either, but it's a very
yeah
cool name for sure.
yeah very cool name. Very smart player on account of the fact that he went to Princeton.
Yep.
And someone who ran track, a big 6'3" wide receiver who ran track. He could run a legitimate 4.2 40 time at his senior day. Um, that's a name where I'm pretty sure he will shoot up draft boards if he does indeed run that 4.2. But 6'3" and a 4.2 40, I don't think it gets any better than that. That's someone that can really take the top off a defense, and play in that Demir Bird type role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Josephus is the easy one to pick, right? I think he's the one that's got the shot to be like the Christian Watson of this year. Like Christian Watson, sort of, I mean, North Dakota State, not exactly a small school, but not, Division One, like FBS power conference team. So sort of a non-power five prospect, great size, great athleticism that has an opportunity to really vault themselves into like the day two, even maybe late round one conversation, similar to a Christian Watson. I don't think Josephus is quite as good as Christian Watson was coming out, but very intriguing nonetheless. I know Rashee Rice is obviously the big name. That definitely late first round, early second round type of guy. Do it all receiver. Limited route tree right now, but I actually think he's a really good route runner. I think it's just SMU didn't have him running a lot of routes. So I really like Rashee Rice. He's someone that I've mocked to the Falcons in the second if he were to fall. So like that, I mean, there's just so many good players. I know Xavier Hutchinson has a lot of fans from Iowa State. I like Puka Nacua a lot from BYU. Another like size, height, speed guy. Missed half the season due to injury. So I think if he had played the whole season, probably be thought of a lot higher in draft rankings at this point. And then of course the Jaden Reed is another one of my draft crushes. Smaller, shiftier type of wide receiver, guy that can do a lot in the short passing game. Also has the deep speed. And then Trey Tucker from Cincinnati. This is a guy that did play with Desmond Ridder officially. I looked it up. Had a couple of years with Ridder. Really sort of had hit a good season. This year, definitely sort of a mid to late day three guy, but the Falcons are looking for a slot receiver that Ritter's comfortable with. Trey Tucker would be a great option there. Just a really strong class as always. I feel like the Senior Bowl always has a really good wide receiver class. And this is it's a good place to evaluate wide receivers because they get a lot of one-on-one opportunities against good defensive backs that not all of these guys had a chance. Some of these guys just cooked, D2 DBs. So it's this is a chance to see what they can do against some tough competition. Running back, sort of the opposite of wide receiver in that it's really hard to actually evaluate running backs at the Senior Bowl because it's not full contact. Sort of the same as like OTAs. Like you don't really get full contact. You don't really get a lot of tackling. So it's hard for running backs, particularly like the physical ones. Like Tyler Algier at the Senior Bowl probably wouldn't have been very impressive, for instance. But the fast, shifty guys can still look good. I don't think it's a primary need for the Falcons, but it's something that I think they'll consider. Any running backs catch your eye in this class, Adnan?
Honestly, I would rather the team not draft any running unless they really fall in love with Bijan Robinson. In the first round, and they're like, all right, this is our guy. This guy is going to be, the next great thing. I'm fine with rolling, giving Tyler Algier those touches, having Cordero Patterson spell him, and then, you have Caleb Huntley there as well. But, if I will give a name, maybe Bijan's teammate at Texas, Rashawn Johnson, who, he was sort of, I don't want to say either the Thunder or the Lightning because Bijan was both. But he's someone who had an impressive season at Texas. Man, the Longhorns really had a hell of a running back duo out there in in Austin. But
Yeah.
that's the name. But honestly, overall, I'll be disappointed if the team takes a running back in general.
Yeah, I think on day 3, I mean, if it's not Bijan, then I think it has to be a day 3 guy, but especially like late because they have those 2 7ths. I feel like you can always sort of squeeze in a running back there if there's a guy you really like and you don't want to risk him in undrafted free agency. You could throw a 7th at a guy, but guys always fall too, so that's part of it. But I definitely do like Rashawn Johnson, like you said. I can't Kenny McIntosh from Georgia. I think. Yep.
That's that would help fill the dog quota, but I don't think McIntosh is going to go really that late.
No, I don't think so. He's gonna be earlier, I imagine. Tyjae Spears is a guy I like too, but again, he's probably gonna be like an early day 3 sort of guy. So we'll see. But I don't think that's gonna be a primary need for them. Where I think there's gonna be more attention paid, of course, is the offensive line class, which is actually really good this year. At offensive tackle, they've got a couple of guys that could potentially challenge for the first round, like DeJuan Jones from Ohio State, sort of the headliner. Darnell Wright from Tennessee has some fans. Any offensive tackles you really like, or offensive line in general?
So the name that sort of sticks out is Matthew Bergeron
Yeah,
from Syracuse.
from the
Is
Cuse, my home. Yeah,
uh, yeah, I mean, yeah, he's up there close to where you are. Yep. Then you have, regarding interior offensive linemen, maybe someone like an Andrew Voorhees from USC. It's, it's a name to consider. Honestly, I would not, and I know I may get killed for this because the team really does need defensive players, but and this isn't, any Senior Bowl talk, but if the team ends up taking Peter Skoransky with pick number 8, I would not be against that pick at all. Like, that's the best offensive lineman in the draft, and that would be Jake Matthews' heir apparent. You could play him at guard to start out, and then, when the time comes for Matthews to transition away from the Falcons, you have a left tackle already ready to take over the reins. But I get it if people kill me for that
no,
take because the team has taken offensive linemen in the first round already. They haven't really hit on any of those edges. I know that everyone wants that edge pick like a Miles Murphy, but if the name picked is Skoransky on draft night, I'm pretty sure that's going to make the Falcons draft party kind of sad. But the Falcons draft party was sad when the team announced the Chris Lindstrom pick as well. So I would not be against that pick at all. But regarding the Senior Bowl, someone like a Matthew Bergeron, if they don't go the route of Skoransky in the first round.
No, because I think Bergeron could be there at the top of the second. The same with like Jalen Duncan from Maryland, who definitely has been rising up the board as well. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree at all with the idea of taking an offensive tackle at 8. I think it's definitely on the table because I think there's an excellent chance that the top offensive tackle is there at 8, and they might be picking from like the third edge or the second or third defensive tackle. The top corner might be gone too. So it's just, for me, it's not going to be Skoransky. I definitely like Skoransky, but I think Skoransky is a guard. The length is a concern, and some tackles have been able to overcome that. Like Rashawn Slater is a great example of that. But I'm a Paris, or I haven't decided between Paris Johnson and Broderick Jones yet. Those guys are gonna be in contention for OT1 for me. I just think
help the dog quota.
Yeah, it would definitely help the dog quota if they went with Broderick Johnson, but I think those guys are the much more typical prototype size that you look for with a premium offensive line pick. I think Skoransky's tape is very good. He's very technically sound, but I don't know that he gives you the pop that you're looking for from like a top 10 pick on the offensive line. And I do wonder if he's just a guard in the NFL, which is not a bad thing. It's just not something you draft at 8. But I do think, Paris Johnson, for example, before he was left tackle, he was left guard and was elite at it, and then moved to left tackle, and he was elite there. And that could, very similar to what you said with Skoransky, could be the path for Paris Johnson. Either the team moves on from McGarry and you slot him in at right tackle, or you franchise tag McGarry and see what happens there, and he plays left guard this year. If McGarry has another great season, then maybe you kick Paris Johnson out to left tackle in a year or two when Matthews is ready to hang him up, and then you find another left guard because it's much easier. So I do think, to me, I lean a little bit more towards guys like Paris Johnson or Broderick Jones at 8, but I do think Skoronski is just a really good offensive lineman. So it's hard to be too upset with that. Just the size, he's, rumored to be under 300 and has relatively short arms. So it's just, it's tough for me to slot that into the top 10, but he's going to go high just because the tape is so good. So,
and to answer George's question in the chat, yes, I'm drinking ginger ale tonight.
Yes. Where's your bold? Where's the bold ginger ale?
No bold tonight. Tonight's regular. That's my soda of choice. I'm not a huge soda drinker, but when I do, I tend to lean ginger ale.
Yeah, I like that. George, by the way, George is at $1,902. He wanted to know if he'd crested the 2,000 mark. George, you are at $1,902 with 318 total donations. So big props to George for single-handedly funding the show. Corey Carter, by the way, you're in second. And Ray Moon is in third. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. Maybe we'll make a little widget for that too. You guys, so we can track the top donators. Give you guys the props. But yeah, George was reminding us that if he had placed his bet on the Eagles to win the Super Bowl, he would have won, about $52,000 off of that. So, yeah,
it could happen.
It could happen. Yeah, it really could. So it's sad. Brandon, you are 12th, I think. It's all really close though. Like, other than George, sort of like far and away number one. I would say 7 through 20 are all within $50 of each other. So it's all pretty close. Make it a competition. I don't want to do it like that. I just want to give people a shout out, So let's see here. Next position. I didn't talk about my interior guys, I guess, because I think offensive tackle is much more likely to be the first round selection. But my son, John Michael Schmitz, he will be there. Top center prospect. Olusegun Oluwatimi from Michigan, another good center prospect. He will be there. Adnan mentioned Andrew Voorhees. There's Osiris Torrance as well. It's a good guard class. It's a good center group. So I think it's going to be a good group on the offensive line. And I think we talked about it. I think the edge group on the defensive side of the ball is really good, but I think the interior group is a little bit lacking, other than a Keanu Benton. I think Zach Pickens is interesting, but this is a chance for this offensive line group could actually be the one that dominates. It's usually the other way around at the Senior Bowl, where the defensive line has really taken them to town. So that'll be interesting to see how that develops. But I'm not super interested in the quarterbacks because I just don't think the Falcons are going to be in on drafting a day 3 quarterback, which is sort of where the Senior Bowl quarterbacks come in. And then at tight end, I think they're pretty much, if they bring back Michael Pruitt, and Parker Hesse's an exclusive rights free agent, so he'll be back. I don't really think there's a need really for another tight end. So I don't know if there's any guys you want to mention in that group, but I'm not paying as much attention to those position groups because I just think they're sort of lower on the list.
No, I'm in the same boat. I'm not for drafting a tight end, running back, or quarterback, honestly, in this draft.
Yeah, I think like Josh Wiley or whatever from Cincinnati makes a lot of sense because of his history with Ritter, but he's probably a late day 3 undrafted type of guy that you could probably get then for camp competition and see if he catches on. But with basically the emergence of Michael Pruitt, you already got Kyle Pitts. Parker Hesse's a perfectly good blocking tight end, and they still have the man, the myth, Felipe Franks, and also John Fitzpatrick, who didn't even play this year. They have all those guys in there to compete. They've got some undrafted sort of guys too. So I think yeah, I know Darnell Washington has been mocked to the Falcons too, and I guess he's the one that I could sort of see, honestly, because he's so unique and sort of fits what the Falcons like to do so well. Darnell Washington's basically like a sixth offensive lineman that's just also a really good pass catching tight end, a really unique player. I mean, it's like, how much is he like that valuable as a tight end too, where you would take him early on day 2? That's the question, really. He's also not going to the Senior Bowl. That's why we're not really bringing him up. But I do think that like this is a team that would probably consider Darnell Washington because of how frequently they use multiple tight end sets. I mean, it's a core part of the offense having 2 tight ends on the field. So the Falcons are probably more likely than a lot of teams to consider Darnell Washington.
But the Falcons don't take any dogs.
Yeah, that's right. No dogs allowed. We have to get 2 dogs now. Yeah.
The Falcons don't like champions. That's what it is.
They don't like winning. They are allergic to winning. So we got one more donation from George with the $5. Thank you so much, George. He says Jacksonville Super Bowl 53 champions, book it. Or excuse me, Super Bowl 58 champions, not 53. We've already had 53. Triggered. But this time I won't be stopped from making the Falcoholic rich. For the draft, I think the Rosen trade is going to keep San Francisco from getting that first that they want for Lance. I think they'll hold on to him, but I'd offer a second and a 4 for him. Yeah, I mean, you'll get good odds on Jacksonville. So if you want to do that swing for the fences bet, I think that's a good one to put it on, because you're not going to get good Eagles odds next year. That ship has kind of sailed, unfortunately. Yeah, and you're not wrong. I do think the 49ers probably want a first for Lance, and I don't think anyone's going to offer that. So it really is just like, if I was them, I wouldn't trade Lance, but who knows what they're going to do. Are you that confident in Brock Purdy? Like that you're going to get rid of the guy you traded 3 firsts for? Well, spent 3 firsts on, traded 2 firsts, but, I wouldn't.
Purdy wins the Super Bowl this year. He'll become an instant legend in California.
Oh yeah, I mean it could happen, right? So, my man Alex Katzen's like coming into the Senior Bowl list and adding players like as we speak. So I guess as of tonight, Malik Cunningham, quarterback from Louisville, has been added to the roster. Grant Dubose, the wide receiver from Charlotte. Maybe some more coming as well. So stay tuned. It looks like we might get a few more names added here late. Shout out to Alex Katzen, by the way, at Alex Katzen for this spreadsheet. It's doing wonders for us here on the show, and for my own research personally. But yeah, Adnan, any other players you want to hit on? I mean, I think we covered a lot of the big guys. I mean, I know at the Shrine Bowl, there's like Zay Flowers, who I know has a lot of fans here. Catrell Clark at corner. There's not as many big names there, so.
Yeah, no, I think we covered a lot of ground tonight, honestly.
Yeah. There's a guy named Juice Scruggs, which is maybe the best offensive line name I've ever heard. I mean, he's up there with John Michael Schmitz in offensive line names. So I feel like I have to look into this man now. Yeah, no, I think this is a good class. It's going to be a good one. You guys already know based on the fundraiser, I imagine, but I will be down there in person. The practices will be starting on Tuesday next week. So that's when you guys will be getting the takes. We'll be having live shows every single practice immediately following to recap stuff. And then, of course, we'll do a wrap-up show at the end of Senior Bowl as well. I'm hoping to get some more great guests when I link up with guys down there once again. And it's going to be some tremendous content, so look forward to that as well. We did get just one more donation here from Jason Gaines with the $2. Thank you so much, Jason. He says, I do not want the Falcons to draft Clemson defensive end Miles Murphy because the track record for Clemson edge pass rushers is terrible. Draft busts that range from Gaines, Adams, Vic Beasley, Kevin Dodd, Cleveland Farrell. It would be a dumb high draft pick. Yeah, I mean,
Fair, not the helmet.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, you're not wrong that there has been an exceptionally bad track record for Clemson players. But Vic Beasley, I'll continue to say this. Vic Beasley, it wasn't a talent issue. It was a want to issue with Vic Beasley. You saw in 2016 that man had the talent to be an elite NFL pass rusher. He just didn't have the want to. Cleveland Farrell was way overdrafted. Everyone knew it. Yeah, it was, and same with Kevin Dodd. I mean, I think a lot of people were like questioning why he was such an early pick, and Cleveland Farrell was expected to be like a late first rounder, maybe early second rounder. The Raiders just drafted him early, so and then they put these insane expectations on him too. So Myles Murphy is a better player than Cleveland Farrell for sure. He's a much better player than Kevin Dodd. I would say he's a more well-rounded player than Vic Beasley as well. So I do think Myles Murphy is well worth the 8th overall pick. I doubt he'll be there as a result, but I do think Myles Murphy is much more of the polished, ready-to-go player than any of the other Clemson pass rushers of late. So I'm a big fan of him too. Yeah, Shaq Lawson as well. But again, Shaq Lawson, I don't think any of these guys were as good as Myles Murphy is or as well-rounded. So, scout the player, not the helmet. That's what we always say. And I maintain that. You just have to remember, like, Clemson's defense, it asks these guys to play gap control. It asks guys to be really slow and calculated and not give up the edge and play the run first. And that's fine, but it does limit the production and the pass rushing exposure that these guys get. And I think that probably contributes to why some of them are late bloomers. So, we'll see. Dustin Black mentions Brian Brzee as well. That's another one, doesn't have a lot of production. So we'll see. We could wrap up though. I think we're pretty much ready to go here, for our Senior Bowl preview. I think we covered pretty much everything we need to. Before I let Adnan get out of here, I want to remind folks to like and subscribe. Leave us that 5-star review on the podcast platforms as long as we still have them. And then, we really appreciate everyone for watching. Thanks to my co-host Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way for joining us. Anything you want to plug before we get out of here, Adnan?
Tyler Algier rookie review article. I think that'll go sometime this week. Absolutely.
Check that stuff out, guys. And I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin. Like I said, stay tuned for all the Senior Bowl previews. They'll be coming out over the weekend into next week, with the final ones publishing Monday. And then Tuesday, we start the live coverage of the Senior Bowl. So look forward to that, guys. I will keep you posted with anything that I hear. We'll keep you stick close to the Falcoholic.com for all the latest on the defensive coordinator search and more. Until then, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time on the Falcoholic Live early next week in Mobile. Until then, thank you all so much for your donations, for your support, and we will see you next time on the Falcoholic Live.